So, ladies and gentlemen, you have to ask yourself the question, why is the international community lying about, well, certain things? But before we get onto it, let's actually talk about something that many individuals have heard, but few want to actually talk about. And that is the slogan of Globalize, the Intifada. This is actually a slogan now used by some pro-Palestinian activists, and its meaning is often classed as being politically and emotionally charged. Now, to actually fully understand what it means, is the Arabic for it means an uprising or a shaking off, and it historically refers to the first Intifada, which occurred from 1987 to 1993. Now, this was a mass Palestinian uprising against Israeli control in the West Bank and Gaza, marked largely by civil disobedience and protest. Now, the second Intifada, which was from 2000 to 2005, was a far more violent uprising involving suicide bombings, shootings, military confrontations, and it resulted in thousands of deaths, many of them civilians on both sides. Now, obviously, the net result of this is that Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza and ultimately opened it up to control by Hamas. So what does globalize the Intifada mean? Well, the two interpretations of it are that it calls for a worldwide solidarity with Palestine and its causes and encourages a global protest, boycotts, disinvestments, and sanctions, obviously against Israel. It's also considered as a way to shake off what they see as a global complacency in Israel's actions. And supporters of it say that it's a non-violent resistance and pressure through civil movements. But that's not really what it is. And so many critics argue that what it actually is a call to expand violent uprisings globally, including terrorism and armed resistance beyond Israel's borders. It's a justification of violence against Jews and Israelis around the world, especially since the Second Intifada included many suicide bombings. And it's a code incitement to globalize anti-Israeli violence cloaked in revolutionary language. So why is all of this really important? Well, it's important to understand what's going on in Gaza at the moment, because as you all know, in Gaza, the October 7th massacre was as a net result of what they called the Intifada. Now, the net idea of this was that they would use these hostages, something that they've been using against Israel for a very long time, as a form of leverage in order to get Palestinian fighters, if you will, or Palestinian prisoners currently imprisoned in Israel for, well, terrorist activities, freed. And in exchange, they would then release or use as bargaining chips the Israeli hostages that they have. Now, one of the individuals, the leader of Hamas, that was originally imprisoned and was one of the first hostage swaps, did say upon returning to Gaza that October 7th was the first of many such October 7th incidents. And he said that they would keep occurring into the future and that ultimately they would use this Intifada to effectively get more of their prisoners released. Now, what's happened since then is that the war, if you will, against Hamas has been very turbulent, especially from an international arena. And so what we are now seeing is that starvation claims in Gaza are being used or weaponized against Israel to say that the war itself is unjust. But it's important to recognize that Israel doesn't feel that it can leave Gaza, knowing full well that the leaders have promised to commit further October 7th massacres. So they say, well, how can we leave this war unfinished? It would be a betrayal to all those that have died so far in the war against Hamas. So let's actually look at what's going on. Well, the international community today, including South Africa, has said that according to them, Israel is starving the Gazans. And so what Israel has done is that they've refuted this. Israel claims that since May 19th, 2025, they've allowed aid into Gaza via two main channels. And this is distribution via the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This is weekly food packages for families. And they've allowed aid via the UN and NGOs. That's raw ingredients, bakeries, and communal kitchens. So key statistics are 4,500 trucks have entered Gaza, 2,500 tons of baby food have been delivered, Flour for bakeries has been provided, and 950 trucks are currently sitting idle at the crossings waiting for the UN to collect and distribute. Now, the IDF today released a video which shows footage of thousands of pallets of untouched aid inside Gaza, and these pallets are not being distributed by the UN or aid agencies. And so they're asking, why is the UN demanding more trucks when they haven't even moved what's already been delivered? And so Israel's position is clear. It has an obligation to allow aid in. Yes, the UN is failing to collect and distribute that aid, and the narrative of famine is being used as political warfare, not humanitarian agency. In fact, you can actually see the video right here of all the pallets. Now, this argument that the UN is weaponizing the war itself against Israel actually does have merits. Because Francesca, the UN special reporter, says that eliminating Hamas means eliminating a political party, and this is not a military objective. It's the elimination of Hamas that is at the heart of the genocidal logic that Israel has implemented, showing that the UN itself has decided to effectively side with Hamas. Now, it's important to recognize that the EU, the United States, the UK, Japan, Australia, and Canada, and many other nations have designated Hamas as a terrorist organization. So you can't really say it's a political party in that context. So why exactly is the UN's special reporter telling us that apparently Hamas is A-OK? Well, this is very puzzling in itself. In fact, you can actually see her comments right here yourself.
Eliminare Hamas significa eliminare un partito politico, e questo non è un obiettivo militare, è l'eliminazione di Hamas che poi è al cuore della logica genocida che Israele ha attuato.
Now, this has led many to suggest that the UN is effectively manufacturing a crisis itself for political purposes. Now, the UN and humanitarian groups, including South African media, that's the SANEF, the CFE, and the Code, have all accused Israel of creating a famine and reference the following. So they say that journalists are suggesting that they are starving to death. The WHO reports 21 deaths from malnutrition in 2025. Malnutrition was over 20% of pregnant/breastfeeding women. 95% of households lack clean water, and there's been over 1,000 deaths of aid distributions since May 27th. But Israel has now provided evidence that aid is not being collected or distributed by the UN, and Hamas itself is storing or hoarding those supplies and using its tunnels for luxury dining while civilians suffer. This has never been about helping Palestinians. It's actually about helping Hamas weaponize suffering to manipulate the world and paint Jews as Nazis. Effectively is what the Israeli government suggests. And you can see the video right here of Hamas enjoying the food.
والموز موز والبلح بلح واللحم لحمه واليوم لفات رز ويا حبيبي وهم يغلب عليكم المانجا مانجا يا ابو بهجه والموز موز يا ابو بهجه والبلح بلح يا ابو بهجت واليوم 5 لفات رز قدحت يا ابو بهجت وراحن عليك يا ابو خالد راحت عليك الخير كله كب علينا يا ابو خالد ان شاء الله يا اخوان ابو خالد حيقصر حيجيب لكم عامه برومه يخلف على اللي جابه خسر والله مطمنه طعمه ويخلف على الاخ ابو بكر بعت لنا مانجا وبلح وموز الاخ ابو بكر وحلب من عند ام احمد.
Now, whilst this new footage has been released, senior Hamas officials have also been seen enjoying lavish meals underground. These meals are not from humanitarian aid, they're Hamas stockpiles. Meanwhile, civilians are left to starve. The UN claims that Israel is denying access to humanitarian aid, but the 950 aid trucks say otherwise. So this has led individuals to say there's no logistical failure going on here. It's a deliberate strategy by Hamas to create humanitarian pressure on Israel, to provoke international outrage, particularly amongst Western liberal governments and media. And it's kind of working. Now, you see, if you wanted proof that Hamas was denying citizens access to aid, look no further than this video right here. Now, many would suggest that the evidence itself is categorical. You can actually see it in the videos. They're not hiding this. So why then has the South African media organizations released a joint statement accusing Israel of collective punishment and grave violations of international law, citing the AFP's plea that journalists are starving? And remember, these journalists that are supposedly in Gaza, one of the things that we've learned from all the BBC reporting is that many of them are Hamas supporters, and many of them are very good actors. So one has to take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt. In any case, because these journalists are supposedly at stake, the media organizations are claiming that the survival of free expression is at stake in Gaza. And that's kind of rich coming from these individuals, because there is no free speech in Gaza. It's an Islamic dictatorship. There's no free speech, buddy. I dare you to criticize Islam in that place, and we'll see what happens. Now, they've also been joined by the WHO and now Brazil, which has also joined with South Africa at the ICJ in its genocide case against Israel. So what have we actually learned from this? Well, Israel shows that aid is being delivered. They've shown videos that the UN is not collecting the aid. And they've shown footage of Hamas eating while the Gaza starve. And they've also showed footage of Hamas beating up Gazans trying to get the aid. So the media and the UN continue to cry famine and foul, but it's not about aid, it's about optics. This is to demonize Israel, shield Hamas, and manipulate the West. And to be honest, the biggest problem that we're seeing in the West is that they're just too stupid to understand this. The UN itself is being weaponized, and that in itself is highly problematic. This is nothing more than a new age blood libel, and to be honest, aid shouldn't be weaponized against the people. But that's the news. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.
Free Palestine.
No, no picture.
No, you get no things.
No, no.
You want my money?
No.
You want to steal my money? Aye, where you going? Where you going? Aye, come here, bro.
Stop it.
Come here, bro. Come here. Aye, why you running? Why you running?